Welcome to the Spargus Project, everybody. The third episode. I want to start this one by giving a shout out to Jason Robinette and John Oinowski. They were two dudes who engaged with us a bunch in the last one, which was the top 10 betas and the three guys in a weight class who won on your side. I didn't know this about John, but apparently he was a pro MMA fighter, pro boxer, wrestled in high school. Apparently he's a scrappy little motherfucker, and I had no idea. So it's cool to learn stuff about that just off a video you put out. He always seemed like a tough guy, but I had no idea he fought that much. So good to know. And on the YouTube side, someone threw out Gary Roberts as a beta, and that was a guy I didn't even think of, but clearly he's a big beta, but he's not really relevant anymore. But yeah, he's beta certified for sure.
Yeah, big time. That totally slipped my mind, but you could definitely put him on that list.
Yeah, I didn't even think of him. That's how irrelevant he. All right, we could jump right into the top 10 list this week. This is the top 10 arm wrestlers that Chris and I think, 5 apiece, who were the most underachieving arm wrestlers. And you can go off of whatever specs you want for that. It's kind of up to you as a person. My list is kind of confusing because you're going to see guys on my list that are excellent arm wrestlers that did really well, but I don't think they did nearly as well as they could have. I don't have any idea what Chris is outside of one guy. I asked him if he was on there or not. So we haven't talked about this at all. Hopefully we don't cross paths, but we'll see. Chris, you can start. Who's your number 5 most underachieving arm wrestler of all
time? It's actually Travis Bajan. And let me explain. Travis has so many strong attributes. He understands, he analyzes the sport better than almost anyone. He's incredibly dynamic. He's fluid. He has great instincts for the sport, all that. And yes, he's arguably the best left arm wrestler we've seen. But why he makes my list is I don't think he likes pain. I don't think he likes to, well, I know for a fact he doesn't like to indulge in the physical side. He's not a big gym guy. And if he was, he'd be the GOAT, both arms, undisputed. Because he has so many, the qualities he has that are so strong are insanely strong. But his weaknesses or the things he's not willing to work on are incredibly big. So that's why he's my number 5, because sky's the limit with that guy. Except he does not like to grind. His limitations are his strengths are huge, but his limitations are huge as well. And that gap is why he's on my list.
Yeah, I thought about him too. He's actually one of the guys I had on my list of extras in case, like, you and I crossed the path. I was going to throw him in there because I agree completely. And a lot of people say he's in the argument for left-handed. That's just because so many more arm wrestlers are right-hand dominant. I think he is equally good both hands. He just never reached his full potential. And I don't know if it was because he's money motivated or if he's got other things going on, like he had kids. But yeah, he should have been top tier both. He was a world champion right-handed too. He beat Vavoda right-handed. He should be in the conversation for both.
He's so gifted that I think the difference between his left and his right is his left can go a decade without training and still dominate. Would he be the number 1 in the world? No, but he would dominate. His right is easily exploitable if he's doing nothing. But he's still not, even his training that he does, which he shares with most people, is not really increasing human strength training. It's specific arm wrestling type stuff. But not that, he would neglect certain things that would make guys elite. Like he won't do heavy stuff in the gym. I don't think he likes pain. I don't think he likes to grind. I think he likes to couch. I think he likes to talk. And what he does better than anyone else on earth. I'm not taking away from what he does, but it's what he doesn't do or not willing to do, which is why he'll never ever or has not achieved his potential. Because basically, this list is basically it's the gap between what a man is and what his theoretical potential is, and his theoretical potential is crazy high.
Yeah,
and will never be achieved.
Yeah, you hit the nail on the head. He won't ever be what he would have been. It's too late.
No, and the fact, yeah,
we'll talk about Travis later on. But yeah, I agree completely. It will never be what it would have been. But he is trying to make a comeback now. But I agree.
Yeah, I'll make another small point. Usually, guys that are great and excel at the highest level, there's a big level of consistent passion and application. And one thing I knock on him is he's money driven. He's not a guy that, I'm not saying he's not passionate about sport, but his passion goes in and out, and it's usually linear to the amount of money he can win. So I don't think he truly loves the sport. I think he loves what the sport can give him, and he always has. But I don't believe that he actually loves the sport, and that's another thing, another reason why he has not and will not achieve his potential.
Well, there's plenty of evidence of that out there. You can see videos of him at practice where he's smoking guys, and as soon as he gets stopped, he's like, "Nope, I'm done." He's not going to grind it out at practice. He's a one-way freight train. He's kind of a glass cannon. I'm going to smoke you, or I'm going to get shattered. And that mindset carries with you from training to your application for pulling. So yeah, I agree 100%. My number 5. This is another one that's strange. Well, it's not strange. I think it's legit. But a guy who was hyper successful, climbed the top of the mountain, but didn't stay there and never really even planted his flag. It's Dennis Plankoff.
Man, yeah, he was actually my number 5, and I pumped him off for Travis. But yeah, and I know all the reasons you're going to give because I argued them in my head earlier today. But go ahead.
Yeah, Dennis was the guy who was a freak show. He smoked love. Well, he didn't smoke love keys. They had a War Arnold Classic. He won Zlotys. He was arguably number 1 in the world, even though he didn't beat Pushkar. He didn't get a chance to pull Pushkar legitimately, but he technically was number 1 in the world, but he never really beat the number 1 in the world guys. And he was a shooting star. It was like once he got to his crescendo, he just disappeared. He fell off the face of the earth. It, Everyone kind of knows that it was from excessive gear use, but he was having organ issues. He disappeared for years. And he's trying to make a comeback now, but he's not the same guy. He's older. He's trying to take a match that he gets 6 months to prepare for because he can only run one cycle a year now. Like everything's weird with him. He's never going to be what he could have been, and he could have been the guy who carried the torch to Levon. I feel like arm wrestling fans and arm wrestlers, we should have seen Plankoff have a dominant run, and it should have been him and Levon having wars instead of Levon just smashing everybody now. But we never got that. And if him and Levon pull now, it would be a complete joke. It would be a shit show. Levon would crush him. And it's because Dennis underachieved. And I don't know if it's because his body gave out. I don't know if it's because his heart gave out. Whatever it was, he never achieved the dominant run he was supposed to, in my eyes.
If you remove Dennis's brain and you replace it with the brain of Corey Miller or Engen Terzi, 2 guys that would make my overachieving list, he would never be touched. No one would budge him. He has physical traits, and I don't care about the gear. People talk about gear. I mean, you can take gear all your life, exactly what he took, and you would never look like him. You would never have his structure. You would never have the potential output that he can generate in a gym or on the table. I just think he lacks general intelligence. I think I watched him train for Devin, and I'm like, I don't think he knows how to train. I don't think his coaches understand how to train. But I don't, they don't understand how to use what he has. I don't think he understands. His raw strength might be superior in certain ways. It's superior to Levon, but Levon has a better mind. Dennis is, and I'm not saying he's a stupid guy. I just think he does not know how to read and analyze the sport and how to structure training, or coaches as well, I can say, because they're linked, obviously. And it's just a shame because, I mean, his left arm he didn't even have to be good. Like his left arm, at a certain point, even when Christian Binney was still relevant, and Christian was a top 5 in the world lefty, Christian Binney couldn't budge him. And yes, Dennis has a history of strong men, so obviously his joints and he's an incredibly strong individual. But when it comes to he's the polar opposite to Travis. I say Corey Miller's mind, but if you give him Travis's mind, it would be the same thing. Not fluid, not dynamic on the table, does not know how to adapt. I mean, the guy's been pulling at a high level for a decade, give or take. And when he pulled Devin, well, more than a decade, it's almost like, well, Devin was tenfold the better puller. Like Dennis had no clue how to adapt when what he was trying to do did not work. He had no clue. He looked like a child, bewildered, like he woke up at Christmas morning and wondered why there's no gifts under the tree. Like he just didn't know what to do. And for an elite puller that has a coaching staff, for that to happen in an elite world champion match, for me is unforgivable. And yeah, it's just a shame because wicked raw physical talent.
Yeah, and I think you're right again, where he was just lacking intangibles. He had all the physical tools, none of the intangibles, and that was his biggest problem. Zero intangible ability. no transitions. I'm just gonna sit back in the strap. I'm just gonna use my power. Like if he harnessed his power and molded it into something that was an effective, legit arm wrestler, he would blow away everybody.
Mhm.
Like
Yeah,
Devin's, his shoulder joint is like someone's hip joint. Like he is
yeah,
a different built human being. And
yeah,
I'm not saying he used gear as a negative, or I just think if he could have scaled back his gear a little bit, maybe his kidneys would have lasted longer. Like I don't hate on someone for using it, but I think he went over the top early on because he was so hungry, and he, like you said, he didn't have the intangibles of the brain to outthink anybody or to develop with what he had. And he was like, I'm just
yeah.
gonna beat the gills and get stronger than everybody and beat everybody. And he kind of did, but he kind of didn't, and that's why he made my list.
Mhm. Yeah, there's a young team in Montreal, and I keep telling them you can try to get strong right away, like physically strong, which is not a bad thing. I encourage that, but there's another way of approaching arm wrestling, and that's kind of the story I always tell is Corey Miller started arm wrestling and was terrible, got beat by everyone. But because he wasn't strong, he learned how to be fast. He learned how to have an incredibly well timed hit. He learned how to transition. He learned how to be fluid, and he learned how to connect in every way. And then as he got stronger and he incorporated weights, he became incredible. Engen, you could say the same thing about Engen at another tier of a level, but it's almost like Dennis was so strong he never bothered to learn how to connect properly and be fluid on the table,
Yeah, he just both
which can hurt. Yeah, yeah,
oh, yeah, it can hurt you. Just like being super talented can hurt you, and that's how a
that's
lot of
right.
them made the list. Mostly relied on talent or just didn't have the heart and gave up. But yeah, same difference either way. No matter how you leave the room, you leave.
Mm-hmm.
Who's your number four, Chris?
My number four is Matt Mask, and I'll explain why. The most dominant lever, the most dominant hand in terms of length and thickness. It's a nightmare for anyone that wants to hook to even have a chance with him. He's fast, he's lightning fast, he's explosive, he's intense, he's got so many things going for him. But here's another guy that when his wrist gets turned, he never wins a match. When he loses pronation, he loses 100% of all his matches um, against legitimate pullers. And when I see that, I see a guy that's too lazy to work on the Todd Hutchins rule book of arm wrestling or that type of training structure. Because again, when something is so easy and so natural, why bother doing something that's painful and going to take more time and won't yield the same results? But it's a similar to Travis, except Matt has way more physical talent than Travis, and Travis has way more cerebral talent than Matt. But they're both Matt's a huge underachiever because of the physical gifts he has, and he's also fiery. Like he's not. It's not like he has no spirit. He has a wicked fighting spirit as well. It's just neglecting certain things creates a massive gap between who he is and where he is very impressive. It's not like he's not an elite puller, but where he could have been, Devin has no business pulling with him ever. Like in the last 10 years, Devin has no business beating Matt. When you look at the geometry and the physics of who they are, younger, longer, bigger hand, thicker hand, quicker, and yet he doesn't because he never not willing to build an elbow joint. Uh, you know, so yeah, he's my number four.
Yeah, I could see it. Matt has the advantage too of being able to make the 242 class. He doesn't have to pull supers.
No,
Matt's lean enough and lanky enough. He doesn't have to pull the biggest guys in the world. And at that weight range where he could make easily, he should be able to tear a lot of those guys up. But he can't hook. It's been written in stone his entire career. If you turn him inside, he's gonna lose. Even if he hangs in for a while, he's still gonna lose. And I don't know what it is. I don't know why he has never built that up. I don't know if it's a mental
yeah,
weakness or if it's just only willing to train your strengths. Could be anything, but he's never shored that up.
yeah. And it's not that he's averse to pain because I think he's broken his finger and he's dislocated it and replaced it during a tournament. So he's got pain threshold, he's got toughness, he's got everything. And it's it looks like it's criticism, but really it's like I look at it and I'm like, what if? What if? Like, what if he had and the law of genetics say that not one man will have every single thing on earth. he will have this, 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 but he will lack morality, or he'll have this and this, but he will lack this. Not everyone is given everything. Um, so it's but yeah, definitely he's on my list.
Yeah, and I'm a big fan of Matt. When he broke his
Yeah, yeah.
and dislocated him and kept putting him back in and going to war, I love watching Matt pull. But yeah, the same as you. I wish he would have gotten more out of what he did, for sure,
Mhm.
without a doubt. Okay, my number 4. This is a weird one because there's hardly any video footage. There's hardly anything out there about him, and that was why I put him so low on the list. But it's Danny Tesh. Danny Tesh.
Oh man.
Do you remember Danny?
Well, yeah, you're talking 2000, the wall, right? The
Yeah,
burgeoning years of wall, 2014 to 2016. His left was tearing through every motherfucker.
yeah.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, Danny was the savior of Australia before Lackland. He was the number one guy, smoking everybody. We've all seen the video of him beating Devin, and
Yeah.
the Australians will claim it was fresh, and everyone else who was there will say he wasn't fresh. But Danny Tesh was supposed to be the guy, came to Wall, won his super matches, killed everybody, and then just completely disappeared. He was supposed to be the next big thing. And on top of all of that, he was new to the sport. He had not been pulling very long. He was beating high level world class guys within a year of pulling. And I don't know if it was because he chose to be a farmer. I'm sure Ryan's made a video about it, but Ryan doesn't want to talk too much about Danny because Danny's way better than him. Danny could come off the farm right now and beat Ryan, but Danny still never achieved what he should have achieved based on where he started.
Oh yeah. I mean, I haven't even. Yeah, I mean, talk about out of totally out of right field. That's a great one because I would have never. You could have gave me 2 weeks to think of a list, and I never would have thought of him because he's so far removed, and his sample size is so small. But that's an excellent one.
Yeah, sample size is super small. I'll give a shout out to Tom Radigan. Tom and I were talking about it at practice last night, and then he messaged me today. He's like, Danny Tesh is a guy we didn't even think of. And I was like, well, in my mind, I'm like, who the fuck would remember Danny Tesh? But he was a shooting star on YouTube, and then just completely. But he came to Wall. He beat Quinlan in a super match. He had impressive performances. Ryan was telling us all about his vector numbers, and then he just disappeared off the face of the earth. So he never really achieved anything that he should have based on how good he looks starting. So he's number 4.
Mm-hmm.
Who's your 4, Chris? Or your 3?
My three.
Yeah. I do this every week. My bad.
Yeah, I'm gonna go. This one pains me because such an awesome human being. Generally loves the sport, but it's Jeff Dab. I don't know how you want to pronounce it, but Jeff Dabe. But yeah, just for what he has, and what he has is, you know, astronomical. Never really worked on other things, and I'm not going to use words like lazy, but took for granted that he had this massive mid of a hand that no one can get around. And again, lacked fluidity, never really truly learned the subtle art of, the subtle details of arm wrestling. Not, I don't believe he's that strong. If you take off his hand and you give him the hand of a standard 250-pound guy, I think he loses every match. And for that reason, he's my number 3. Arguably could have been 2, but yeah, but he's my number 3 because again, it's what could have been. Imagine if it's a theoretical debate, right? Imagine if, So again, sky's the limit, but for whatever reason, lack of desire, whatever it is, lack of adaptability, but could have been ridiculously great. And it's just I don't even know, he's an elite pro. Well, not, on my tier standard, I don't know if he'd be elite, but he's definitely a legitimate puller. But just the gap is massive to where he could have been.
Yeah, you can make the argument that he's number 1. But the physical tools he's been gifted, you mentioned earlier about giving someone Corey Miller or Ingen Terzi's brain. If you gave Jeff Dobb or Dave the brain of a I don't know, not even a Homo sapien, maybe a Cro-Magnon man, he'd be number one in the world at his weight class. I think he's
Yeah.
so stupid when it comes to arm wrestling that he can't use. Why are you trying to hook everybody? Like you've got the biggest
Yeah.
in the world, the biggest arm in the world. What's happening?
Yeah.
Doesn't make any
Yeah.
sense.
And why it's frustrating for me to watch these guys with these massive hands is because I have arguably, one of by far one of the smallest hands in my weight class, and I've had to learn and adapt and build it so it can do something, it can do one thing exceptionally well, and it's done that. It can't do many things, but the one thing it can do. But I had to train it for many years to do one thing good, and to bring the match to a certain point. And it took a lot of And if I can do that with a fucking child's hand, I don't understand how these guys with these massive. I mean, I always wondered what it would be like to arm wrestle if I had the bigger hand, with the longer forearm, which I've never had ever. What would happen? So when I see guys like this, it's like, what if, what if, what if? So anyway,
Not only the bigger hand, just the tissue development.
yeah,
The amount of tissue that man has on his hands, his forearms, his upper arms. I mean,
yeah,
he has to
and,
get ant leg t-shirts to get his arms through, and he's
yeah.
not an elite pro. He's
And it
not.
doesn't have to be strong. It doesn't have to be strong because if you grab someone like you who's a light heavyweight or arguably a super heavyweight now, just to get around him, it's like putting your hand on a melon, a watermelon. Like it's just, how do you get a good? No one has business being in a match with this guy. You shouldn't even be able to get the strap if he doesn't want you to get the strap. But anyway,
Yeah,
um,
yeah, you could make an argument for him for number one. Honestly, I think like he's
well, no, we agree on many things, but I'm going to disagree on that because my number one, he lives on a planet by himself. No one's even close.
All right. Well, now
So
I'm
anyway,
curious because I have no idea who that is. Honestly,
okay.
I'm curious now. All right, my number three. It's another North American puller, Chris Chandler, the Freak. His nickname's the Freak. He came on many years ago. He won all the lightweight titles. I mean, I feel like he's won 30 national championships at like every weight class leading up. And then he got super huge and just fell off the map. He's still good. He's still a high level pro in North America, but I think he turned more towards bodybuilding and getting as big as he could versus getting as good as he could at arm wrestling. I think if he stays at that 200-pound range and just hones his skills and his ability for arm wrestling, he should have been the Freak. But he just turned into the Freak based on looks, not on ability and skill or things he accomplished. Because he should have been absurdly strong.
Yeah, I pulled him in 2006 in Manchester at the Worlds. We were both in the 165, 75 kilo class. It was like 30 guys in that class, and uh, I don't think I pulled him, but um, imagine 165, and then 2 years later he's pushing 230, and I don't know if I completely agree with that because he didn't have a big hand and he did not have a massive frame. So when he started pulling guys 199 or 220, he held his own. Then he pulled super heavyweights and he held his own. And one thing with him is, despite having a fairly short hand for his size, he always used it very well. And we're not talking he used every tool he had very well, but he did not have a dominant hand, and he used it very well, specifically in the strap. So I find in certain ways he overachieved. So yeah, I mean you make solid points, but for me, and yes, he decided to put more time into bodybuilding, but it's more lucrative maybe for him. But it's a sound argument. But yeah, I could have I think of many others before I think of Chris Chandler as an underachiever because he was I think you know he did not have a 230-pound frame.
No.
And he was pulling guys 230, and he did not have. He had a middleweight hand. At best, he had a middleweight hand, if not a lightweight hand. First time I saw him pull, he pulled 154s. Same
Yeah.
height. It's a full-grown man. This is not a 13-year-old. And then next thing you know, so but yeah, it's not a terrible pick.
Yeah. Well, how old was he when back then? When he was pulling the 154, he was a young man, really young.
Well, first time I met him was Tokyo in 2005 Worlds, and he stood out because he had almost a shaved head with the uh, American flag dyed into his hair, like he had a crew cut, and he was lean as fuck. But I think he pulled. I don't know where he pulled, but it wasn't a heavy class, obviously. Uh, but yeah, um, and he did well, you know. But you can argue that Chris Chandler did better as he added tremendous amount of weight to a not an overly big frame, which is rare in the sport, because he always gave up leverage and he gave up hand size, and he still did fairly well.
Yeah, yeah, he's still good as a bigger guy. I think if
Mhm.
he stays in that middleweight range and just hones, because he's still young. I feel like Chris Chandler's my age. I'm 36. I feel like he's close to my age, maybe 40. Like he's not an old
Yeah,
man. So if
no,
20
I don't.
years ago he was already at that level, imagine if he just stayed in that range and focused on arm wrestling. I think he'd be talking
Yeah,
about a guy who's better than Toulier. He might be the best North American guy in that middleweight range.
yeah. I mean, in the apex of his career in arm wrestling, he has wins over. I mean, you can make a movie on the names he has. Like he's beaten a lot of guys,
Yeah,
a lot of guys.
yeah, and I still think he's good, and I like Chris. I just would have liked to have seen him stick in his class and see where he could go.
Yeah.
That's why he's on my list. But I understand your disagreement because he still did good. But so
Well, because he didn't have a ton of gifts. He had some gifts, and he had a lot of help, but he was not tailor made. He was not put on this earth to arm wrestle, um, and yet he did pretty damn well. But your points are valid. Um, yeah,
I understand your side too because Chris is good. Chris is still dominant. He'll smoke most guys in North America. But I'd have liked to have seen him smoke most guys in the world in a class that fit his frame.
mm-hmm.
We've talked about Chris for forever. Who's your next guy?
My number two is an American, and the reason I pick him is because, um, well, so when you're talking about a prototypical arm wrestler, uh, you're looking at, if you can build an arm wrestler from scratch, you're looking at dominant hand, not dominant arm length. You don't want long, but you want arm length from elbow to fingers. Um, uh, Depending if you're a hook puller or a top roller, you want a thin waist, you want low body fat, you want very small legs, you want big, thick upper body, and you want a bicep attachment that attaches low. What I mean by that is when a guy flexes, you don't have this 2 inch gap. It's a full bicep, like it's a long head, and that helps in creating a lock. And and you want intelligence. You want the ability to analyze, and you want all these things to be able to apply these what you need to do to your training individually and know what you need. So it's like a um, 5 tier prototypical puller, and my number two is RVJ. What did he not have? What physical tool did he not have? Nothing. Not he did not have one. He even had intelligent, highly intelligent guy. The only thing he didn't have, which creates a massive gap on who he is and who he could be, is consistency, desire, discipline, um, all the things that Todd Hutchins has in that realm, RVJ lacks. And he still, arguably, most of his career has been in the top 200, 220 pounder in North America. But this guy, I mean, physically speaking, could have been the GOAT. And I know that sounds alarming, but he had John Brzezink's frame. He had John Brzezink's frame. Why could he not be John Brzezinck with more physical skills? That's a theoretical question. That's a debate. But for me, RVJ's number two, and a massive, massive, massive underachiever.
Yeah, he could have been number one as well. Like you said, he had Brzezink's frame, but he had more bicep, bigger hand,
Yeah,
records. He's got everything you'd ever want. He just doesn't really have the dedication or the drive. And he's talked about it before, where he got into spats with the law or had anxiety issues or drug issues. Those are all mental things. So he had every physical tool in the world, but he did not have the mental fortitude to decide, I want to be the greatest. Because if he did, he I can't imagine where he would be now or even a few years ago if he just dug in his heels and wanted to be the best arm wrestler he could be. He would be killing all these guys.
mm-hmm.
I mean, this is a man who essentially doesn't train for years at a time and then still comes back. And I mean, I would watch him and Paul Lynn. Like I would, like he's still in the realm of top tier guy at that 220, 200-pound class in North America or the world. I would watch, like you can't count him out because you know how good he is. and how strong he is and how freakish he is, but he just didn't have it upstairs to hone in, work on his craft, and be the best he could be.
Yeah, but what's weird is he did have it upstairs in terms of like an above average knowledge of arm wrestling and a smart guy, but with demons, right? Liked to party when he was younger, booze, drugs, all that stuff, and it hurt him. So it's not when technically it's the brain, right? When we're addicted to something or we can't make the proper decisions, it's still the brain. But this is a highly intelligent dude too. Like he was given a ton of tools, a ton more than any arm wrestler that's ever existed.
Yeah, I guess when I say upstairs, I should single that out to decision making.
Yeah, well that's part of it too. Yeah.
Yeah, his decision making was not towards arm wrestling, and I mean, he still had a dominant career, but he should have had an extravagant career. He should be a profession. He should be getting paid like he's a professional arm wrestler because he had that.
And he's super colorful and he's dynamic and charismatic. Like he almost sky's the limit as a commentator. Like almost anything he wants to do, he could have been great. And I don't mean great like elite level. I mean he had the GOAT structure, like he had the DNA, the biology to be the greatest arm wrestler to ever live in open class. I'm not talking you know, 198. He was a 6 foot guy. Any 6 foot guy has the capability of being a super heavyweight stud. But yeah, the only one that I can think that's a bigger underachiever than RVJ is my number one. But RVJ still, boom, he's up there.
Yeah, no, I agree. He is, and I wish he would have done more. I really do. Like I still wish he'd come back. Like you said, he's super colorful. I like listening to him talk, but yeah, I wish we could have seen the best RVJ ever. That would have been something to really behold. My number two is a guy who reached the apex. He technically was the number one guy in the world, but it's Alexei Vovoda. I feel like Vovoda had the athletic ability. I mean, I don't know if you've seen his videos or not, Chris. I've seen the guy leap 6 foot fences. I've seen him running ridiculously fast. He's got all the athletic, explosive intangibles. Plus, he always seems to have an entire team of people behind him. No matter what he's doing, he's got an entire crew of people focusing him and helping him be the best he can be at whatever he can be. But he decided he wanted to win a gold medal in bobsled, or I don't know what. Decided to go vegan. He's taken so many strange paths to me where you were clearly the best guy in arm wrestling, and you just it's like he reached Mount Everest and then he didn't slowly descend down. He just parachuted off and disappeared into the sunset. And then when he tried to come back, he got fucked up. Every time he's tried to come back, he's gotten fucked up. John dominated him. Tim Bresnan beat him up. I'm just bummed that we never saw a guy that physically gifted carry the torch longer than a month.
Wow, yeah. Good one, man. That's an excellent one. I mean, I really don't have anything to say because he's my number one. I can go on. Like he's my number one. Well, I mean, it's a good segue into my number one. But I mean, I can go all the points while you're right, and then when it's my turn to say my number one, I'm just gonna regurgitate all my points. But the only reason, I don't know. I'll let you finish your point, and then I'll go with it.
Yeah, I had no idea he was going to be on your list. I didn't think he would be. I'm like, Alexei was too good, did too many things for anybody to consider him underachiever but me. Like Chris and I did not talk about this, but
no,
he should. You could make an argument for him to be number one for sure. When you get to these lists and you have one or two, just like last week when you stole my number one when you said Grelick number two, he was my number one. You can make the arguments for these guys who massively underachieved, even though they reach great heights. You could do it in any sport. Like just because you reach the height doesn't mean you actually achieved what you should have been able to achieve. But that's my thing with him. He had every ability. He had everyone pushing him. He could have done whatever he decided to do. He would have had government funding and a team helping him achieve greatness. And then he wins a gold medal in bobsled, explosive athlete, has everything. But I mean, I wouldn't even put him in my top 10 arm wrestlers all time. And he easily should have been in the top 3 if he actually achieved what he should have done.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. How many athletes have we seen in the history of athletics, who's 6'4", 260 plus, who can climb a rope with just his arms with weight added. I mean, usually this is a pound for pound type exercise. This guy does things that a 140-pound guy is doing, but he's doing it at. This guy could have been a Pro Bowl linebacker. This guy could have been a Hall of Fame tight end. And the reason why I give him the edge over RVJ on my list is, yes, RVJ. I can even argue in some ways RVJ is more physically gifted. The hand, I mean, RVJ's hand for its weight is just it's almost freakish. But the difference with Alexei is he's got the resources of a country. RVJ, when he started arm wrestling, was a roofer or an electrician. Like, he had a job. He was a blue collar dude from Massachusetts, like, or from New England somewhere. I think he moved around anyway. But Alexei was a silver spoon fed hyper super athlete that was funded and by one of the most powerful countries in the world financially when it comes to throwing money into sports and stuff like that. And you lose to a 50-year-old Tim Bresnan. Like, the fuck you doing? Like, you have everything, and you lose to John Brzenk. Like, I would have lost a lot of money on that. I had him. He lost to a fucking 60-year-old John Brzenk, and that, I think that shocked John too. Like, that shocked John. That shocked the whole arm wrestling world. Like, because he was legitimately training and making a strong comeback, and younger, bigger, stronger, 6'4", 230, whatever. I don't know what he was with John. I don't think he was 240, but he was, lean. Understood everything, understood the biology, understood kinesiology, understood how things work, everything. But what did he lack? Fucking heart, guts. You can't say he lacked that because he was the guy was a gold medal athlete in the Olympics. People that win the gold or are on a podium in the Olympics are not pussies or people that cannot fight through pain and obstacles and challenges. But when it comes to arm wrestling, like, this is not an underachieving athlete. He's an Olympic gold medalist. But this is a insanely underachieving arm wrestler. Ridiculous.
Yeah, not only did he lose to John, he got dominated. Like, that really
was insane. It's unreal. Like, every gift.
There's no analogy.
Crazy.
It should have been. And we both said it. He had the whole country behind him. So, man, you're putting all kinds of pressure on me now for my number one. Now my number one feels lackluster.
I know it, but I gotta know, your number one has to be. I mean, I'll be fucking shocked if it's not who I think it is. Now, I'm not gonna let the cat out of the bag. I'll let you go with it, but I'll be shocked.
I'm feeling so self-confidence dropping now about it. My number one is Arsenal.
Wow.
Who'd you think it was?
How the fuck do you not have RVJ on your list?
Well, I knew you after last week. I knew you were going to have it. We were like, yeah,
wow.
He won, so I didn't want to pick him. I didn't want to pick RVJ because I knew you were going to pick him.
Yeah.
So, yeah, my number one is Arsen Liliev, and Arsen in his prime, which I don't even think he really reached his prime, but he was getting wins on everybody, and he wasn't really the biggest guy, but his hit, his ability, his move, no one seemed to have an answer for. And he was even dominant before he got crazy big. And like you see that match with him and John Brzenk where he beats John. He's not overly large. John looks like the bigger man, but Arsen still beats him. It's a war. It's a close match. But then he gets huge and starts beating everybody. And then
he's the best posting top roll arm wrestler of all time. His riser, he never lost his riser. He had a tremendous brachialis back pressure and ridiculous lat to drag back to the back of his pad. Lat pressure made him the most vicious posting top roller I've ever seen. Yeah, small hand. Man. This is a small hand. This is not a big hand. This is a small hand. It's a short forearm. But what he did, I think if we did I think he might fall on my overachieving list. That's how poor I think that decision is. Like, he had half of RVJ's hand, 2 inches shorter on the forearm, and was essentially a 143 puller when he was 18. Ballpark, maybe 154. But Yeah, I would never guess that. Wow,
Yeah, I just
wow.
wish he would have stuck around longer because I think if he, I don't know what the reason is. When these guys
Yeah,
disappear like this, it's not like they leave a fucking biography or
yeah.
autobiography about why they're disappearing. Like he was supposed to
Yeah.
come
Well,
back
if you're right, you're right.
too at the last event, ditched out of that. Like it's just, and I don't want to see him come back. I don't want to see you now because you're. It's going to be Vavoda 2.0. I don't want to be disappointed twice in what could have been and should have been. Like I think he could have
Yeah,
been one of the best guys in the world. Who's stopping that hit if he gets to 100% capacity?
yeah. For me, he's the most underachieving career and the most disappointing short-lived career.
Yeah,
Because again, so in that respect, I completely 100% agree with you. Um, because I mean, he put a fucking whooping on Travis too. Like Travis wasn't even in the match.
yeah.
Uh,
He beats the
this
blank
guy
off. He
killed.
beats everybody.
Yeah, just yeah. No, it's a good pick. Yeah, I mean, I think more career than the actual arm wrestler because he didn't have a ton of. I look at physical traits. I don't think he had a ton of physical traits that helped him. He had some disadvantages, big time. I mean, his hand was a little bit bigger than mine, and he took John's hand. We didn't take John's hand, but dominated him in the strap. Was able to get out of John's hand to get the strap. But I think that's. I don't think I've watched an arm wrestler his YouTube videos more than Arson back in 2009 to 2012, only because I mean, for his weight class and my weight class, we had similar length forearms and hands, and this guy's like uh,
Freak.
incredible what he's doing, and I can't top roll a 9-year-old boy. So it's like, what am I missing? What am I not doing? What am I not incorporating in my workout where I cannot use, anyway. So yeah, I always looked at him as an anomaly.
Yeah, he has one of those things you can't measure with a tape measure or with a gym lift. It's like, what's your explosive and technical ability where you get those to sync? Where you have this insane
Timing, yeah,
ability, this timing, this technical ability. Like you can't measure it with a gym lift, and you can't put a tape measure up to his arm and
yeah,
say this is why. He just had it. He had the
yeah.
it factor where he could just dominate people.
Yeah, he had a violent hit, and like I always, you can hit with your lat, you can hit with your side, you can hit with your forearm, your back pressure from the brachialis. There's many ways you can hit, and the greatest hitters sink all three. They can sink it. So you can always like if you can always deal with one. Ryan says vector, but you can always deal with one lane. But when a hitter throws like multiple lanes of impact at you at the same time, it is very hard to stop. And this guy does it at the highest level with the highest impact.
Yeah. Yeah, no, I love Arson. I love watching his videos. I agree with everything you said too. And I see the argument for people saying that, like, yeah, he did more than he should have. I just would have liked to seen it for longer.
Yeah, I agree with that. And also like super poised, right? He was never a
No,
flamboyant, like real take care of business, no fucking around, intimidated by no one. And he intimidated many people. You could see a lot of players fucking intimidated by his ability.
oh yeah, yeah. I don't blame him. Like you see that fucking
Yeah.
guy walking up the table with that 20-inch forearm, and you know he's gonna smash you with everything he has and the ability. Yeah, I don't blame him. All
Mm-hmm.
right, I want to talk more about arm wrestling, but we went on so long with that I don't know if we'll circle back to arm wrestling if we have time. You said the very first episode that you think Fedor Emelianenko is the greatest all-time MMA fighter, and I wanted to touch on that with you a little bit because I completely disagree. My MMA goat is John Jones, and I'm sure you've had this argument with many dumb Americans like me who think the coked up Jones is the greatest. And I've had this argument with many people with Fedor, where they think Fedor is the greatest.
No,
So I want to
no.
hear your side. Why do you put Fedor Emelianenko as your go in MMA? What are the reasons?
First of all, I don't disagree with most Americans. My issues come with most Canadians or Quebecers because their goat is GSP, and
Oh
I don't like GSP. He's not on my top 20. Anyway, so Fedor, there's multiple arguments. One is at one point he was 30-1, or was it 31-1? Anyway, and he pulled in a tougher league um, where they allowed more. There was less regulations. He always seemed to give up weight. He pulled in his prime. His resume, he beat all the top at the time, most of the UFC guys. And throw that all out the window. The reason why he's my GOAT Obviously, those things have to play a factor, his resume. But um, there's two ways to categorize a fighter, and that's when it doesn't go their way and they get knocked. Are they retreating or are they attacking? GSP, Connor, 99% of all fighters retreat or try to go in some type of defensive stance. This guy came at you harder. And it's a fight with Randleman where Randleman essentially pile drives his neck into the ground. And you're like, this guy, not only is he not going to win the fight, he's never going to walk again. And 8 seconds later, Randleman taps. The wherewithal for a fighter to be in such a vulnerable, life vulnerable, not a fight vulnerable, but life vulnerable position, and have the wherewithal to put his arm in a certain place where when he doesn't get knocked out, he has access to this guy's arm. Mentally, the most impressive athlete, not just fighter, but the most stoic, intense, physically resilient, aggressive, can hit maybe one of the hardest hitters and can absorb literally any hit. Fought Gary Goodrich and got Gary on half a hit, didn't fully hit Gary, and Gary wanted no part of the rest of that fight. Once he kind of hit Gary didn't want any part of that fight. That's how dominant he was. And so you go by record, you go by who he fought, and you go, for me, it's always the eye test. It's how he fought and how he conducted himself, which for me, it's undisputed. I'll listen to your argument, of course, and I'll see if I can't debate it objectively. But for me, it's not close. But I mean, John Jones is undefeated, so obviously there's an argument there. But for me, it's undisputed that Fedor is the greatest of all time.
Yeah, no, I love Fedor. I think Fedor's. If I had to make a list of most entertaining fighters and guys I would love to watch in their prime, Fedor is probably number one. Just like you said, crazy overhand power, will brawl it out, will tough it out, can submit you, and he's a guy who should have been a light heavyweight. Like if he was kind of always a little bit soft as a heavyweight, and what did he walk around like 235, 240, like 230 sometimes? Could have easily made light heavyweight, but he chose to fight the bigger guys. And like I know you say he fought in a tougher division. I mean, I know they weren't tested over there, so maybe that's what makes it tougher. But he never fought in the UFC, and he beat Tim Sylvia, he beat UFC champions, he beat Mark Coleman, he beat Mark Hunt. Mark Hunt was never really a champion. Like he had
Orlovsky twice.
Yeah, Orlovsky, after he won the UFC championship, when he got knocked out, he was a different dude for a couple years. Like that was why he wasn't in the UFC anymore. Like he was out of the UFC because he couldn't win.
He beat Crow Cop when Crow Cop was the most feared man on earth.
Yeah, but what happened to Crow Cop when he came to the UFC? Gabe Gonzaga murdered him. Brendan Schaub knocked him out. Like Crow Cop was vicious over there, yeah, but was he vicious because he was that good, or was he because wasn't fighting the top guy?
When he fought Fedor, he was at his peak, and yes, afterwards when he went to the UFC, he lost. If my timeline is right, but look at the fight. Fedor did not run from this guy. Other guys tactically beat him.
He doesn't run from anybody. No.
Yeah, but Coleman. He beat a 7-foot Chinese dude. That was an impressive fight. I know the guy wasn't a tailored, well-groomed MMA fighter, but man,
yeah, it's hard for me to hate him because I like him. But if we're talking about goats,
okay, well, okay. We've established the argument why he's great. Now give me John Jones.
Okay, yeah, and the guy I would compare Fedor to, like that I think would be a good match. I think him and Daniel Cormier would be a good match because DC fought light heavyweight, he fought heavyweight, he knocked out. They have a lot of. If you go look at their records, they have a lot of similar opponents. Like Daniel Cormier at heavyweight beat Josh Barnett. He beat Bigfoot Silva, who Fedor lost to, but that was later on in his career. Like they have similar opponents because DC had like 12 fights at heavyweight. And honestly, I don't know if Fedor beats DC. I think DC will probably ragdoll him and take him down. But
are you talking in their primes? I'm sure you're talking in their primes.
Yes, in their primes.
Okay, didn't Cormier lose a fight because someone punched him in the ribs and he couldn't take the pain? Like this is not a warrior.
No,
Yes, he was a good fighter, but it's a fucking Fedor in his prime. Fedor's only loss in the 30 match spread was a disqualification because he was bleeding. He didn't, that's why he lost the fight. I mean, Daniel Cormier go 30-0.
no, but Daniel Cormier would be close to undefeated if it wasn't for John Jones. No, but anyway, we're talking about John Jones.
Yeah.
John Jones, like, he fought most of his career at light heavyweight, which I wish he would have fought at heavyweight. He's got a heavyweight frame. This is the man with the longest reach in the history of UFC. He's 6'4", super physically gifted. He has all the physical gifts, and Fedor has all the mentality gifts. John Jones is tough. We've seen him in wars, and we've heard the stories about how he didn't train. He was coked up, drunk, whatever. John Jones's physical gifts and his technical ability, like you see John fight everybody kind of different. He will adjust his game plan to who he's going against. And if I feel like if I put John Jones and Fedor, even it could be super. I think if it's a super heavyweight, that almost helps John. Like John not having to cut at 205. If he walks in at 240 and he's fighting a guy who's that much smaller than him, Fedor's best chance is to knock him out. Obviously, like Fedor has heavy hands. We know he has jiu-jitsu, but I don't think his jiu-jitsu is better than John. We've seen John submit people with an arsenal of attacks, standing, guillotines, arm attacks, leg attacks. I don't see any way Fedor could even get in on John Jones. I feel like John Jones would control the distance. He's got teep kicks, oblique kicks. I mean, he could probably elbow Fedor, like just frame him with his hand and then elbow him before Fedor could even get in, like we saw him do against Rashad Evans. And I feel like John Jones is just that one guy. If you put him into a fight with a guy, he's always going to come out on top. He's a winner.
Mm-hmm. I'll tell you why Fedor is the GOAT over Jones. And in this theoretical scenario, if they were both in their prime and there's a catch weight of 230, whatever, the reason Fedor is the GOAT is because John wouldn't take the fight. He wouldn't take the fight. He would not fight Fedor in Fedor's prime. He would not fight him. Would not fight him because you're talking about how physically gifted Jones is. He's not nearly as strong. He's not as strong in terms of balance. He has great reach and uses his Muay Thai and his knees very, very well to create distance. And he's arguably, maybe not even arguably, the best technical fighter we've ever seen. What he does better than anyone else. Okay, what's his record? What would his record be? Like 11? Would it be? Is it 10-0, 9-0, 8-0? What is his record? I know he doesn't have a loss.
He's like probably 30, and he's technically got one loss because of when he beat up that deaf guy. He's got 27 wins, one loss, one disqualification because of the PEDs, and one no.
He fought a 6'6" Swede in 2013ish. I forget the name, and it went to the card, and he almost lost.
Yeah,
I forget the guy's name.
Yeah.
Fedor knocks that guy out of the octagon. Like, I just think that Jones, he reminds me of Silva. Is it Spider Silva?
Yeah.
The middleweight. He's the same thing, just one weight class or two weight classes above. Ridiculously talented. You hit him right, and they don't want to fight anymore. What's his name? Chael Sonnen could have beat John twice, or once. Sorry, could have beat him once. Should have had him once and fucked up. Chael Sonnen. Anyway, not a bum, but not a. I don't know, man. Like your argument's not bad. Jones is undefeated-ish. He showed incredible domination, and I saw a thing recently where Dana White said that you put John Jones in a room and lock the door with any other human being on earth, and he comes out, and maybe he's not wrong. A lot of people on this earth, but he might not be right. He might not be wrong. And then there was another comment where someone said something to John Jones, and John's response was, "I'll go over. Don't make me put my hands on you and kill you." Like he said that to another MMA pro fighter, and he didn't look like he was fucking around. Obviously a dangerous man. Obviously on the list. Obviously a debate. But for me, it's no debate. But I mean, you make a strong debate. But for me, Fedor's undisputed.
A lot of these opinions are going to come down to just what you feel. Like a lot of this,
you
can't measure. When you talk about Fedor, you talk about John Jones. You're talking about Mount Rushmore.
Greatness.
Yeah, greatness. One of them, and for different reasons too, equally. But I don't agree with you saying John Jones wouldn't take the fight. Like, I think if John
Hmm.
Jones were the type of guy to not take the fight, he would have been the type of guy who was like GSP, who would never move up, or Khabib, who would never move up. Like, John Jones
Yeah,
wanted a fight and got it.
yeah.
And
The difference, the difference between, I think, and I could be wrong with this, me and you, is that I remember watching Fedor in his prime. I don't think you're old enough. Like, did you see, back, I don't know if you've seen him in the last, if you, in the last third of his career, he took some L's and he didn't always look dominant. But this is after his comeback, but before he made the comeback, this guy was special. And
oh
I don't
yeah,
know how much of that you saw.
yeah, I saw it.
But,
Yeah, dude, I'm a big Fedor fan. Like, I remember
okay.
watching Smash. I remember getting just smashed on the ground against Randleman and finishing it. I remember him beating up Mark Hunt. I remember him knocking out Sylvia. Like, I remember him in the UFC being in negotiations, and I was super fucking excited it was going to happen. And then they got something fell out where the UFC was buying Pride, and he didn't want to make part of it. Yeah, my biggest regret in MMA history is that we never got to see Fedor in the UFC. Like, I don't think there will ever be an event that will top that, because him coming over just to see what he could have done, and he was still relatively in his prime then. Like, he could have had a good 3-4 year run. I think we would
Yeah.
have seen him in John Jones. I think they could
But
have paid Fedor enough to get him to cut to 205.
yeah, you're absolutely right. But the reason, another small reason why I think he's the GOAT is why he didn't go to the UFC. Dana wanted full autonomy on his decision making, and this is a traditional old school dude. And you're not going to tell me that I can I can never go back to Pride. You're not going to tell me who to, like. You're not going to control everything. And Dana wanted to control everything. And you're not going to you're not going to dictate to this man how he was going to fight, or who he was going to fight, or what league, and limit him in every corner. He wasn't just a dominant, ridiculously dominant fighter. This is an absolute mega alpha. Like a, this is, I don't know, this guy's, the way he conducted himself. I don't know, it's
Yeah, yeah.
very
No,
impressive.
I love Fedor. His mentality. He's a fucking stoic murderer, killer. Not a guy you want to see across the ring from you. Just this dude with a dad bod that's going to throw haymakers, and you're not going to knock him out. You're never going to break him. He's going to keep coming, and he has skills. Like, I love Fedor. It's hard for me to talk bad about Fedor. The main reason that I picked John Jones over Fedor is I think John Jones would beat him, and I wouldn't even be happy if John Jones did. I would want Fedor to
Well,
beat him, but I think John
well,
Jones would beat him.
what makes validity in what you just said is that if there was a theoretical, and we can go in a time machine and bring back Fedor at the age of 27, and and it can happen, and you're like, okay, Gabi, it's finally going to happen. Let's put some money down. And I'm like, well, I won't put more than $50 down. So I'm full of shit, right? Because if I really had sure that John had no business, I'd put down everything I have in my bank account, right? And I put my mortgage, but I won't do that because it's fighting, and in a fight, you and I can fight in an octagon. We can fight 55 times. You'll get me 54. It, you know, uh, I had a good conversation with a buddy the other day, and I said, he says, anything could happen. I said, well, not anything. And he says, let me tell you a story. Once two guys wanted to fight in a bar, and the owner said, go outside. So they go outside. One guy was big, the other guy was small. Like, there was 100-pound difference, and the other guy was a better fighter. The bigger guy was the better fighter. As they start into the thing, the bigger guy moves forward. His foot goes into a pothole, and he twists his ankle, and he cannot use his leg. And the other guy starts peppering him, and it became like a neutral fight. And at one point, people watching broke it up because the big guy was going to take some heavy hits. Just to say that won't happen every day, but fuck, anything can happen when you're talking about throwing haymakers and fighting. It doesn't take much, right? Like,
That's the beauty of the sport. That's the beauty.
yeah,
You can have someone that's a 20-1 underdog, but look, Buster Douglas, Mike Tyson, Holly Holm, Ronda Rousey, massive.
yeah, that was
Where it's like you don't really know what this
yeah.
other person's put into their training camp. You don't know what their motivations are, and you don't know what the champ's motivations are. Like, we only see them on the day. You just have to be better than them on that day. You don't have to have a better career. Things just need to go right for you on that day. So yeah, you're 100% right. You never really know what's going to happen. That's what makes fighting the most entertaining, in my opinion, the most entertaining sport out there. Because you never
Well,
know.
it's the hardest one to predict. It's the hardest. Football's second because football with turnovers and pick sixes, and you can have a touchdown go the other way, so it's a 14-point swing. Like, so much can happen in a football game, and it's not like best of seven like baseball or basketball. So so much can happen. Yeah, the best team doesn't always win, just like the best fighter doesn't always win. Like, if Khabib McGregor fought 10 times, would Khabib win 10 times? I'm not sure.
Probably not.
Maybe 8. But I mean, it's so hard to handicap and to predict. And then you have the judges too, who can totally fuck things up. Hendricks, GSP. How the fuck did Hendricks lose to GSP? GSP had blood coming from every orifice, and Hendricks was unscathed. And they gave the fight to the French guy. Like, fuck, did that piss me off? I stopped watching MMA for like 6 months after that. Fuck, did that piss me off?
Yeah, judges are always the worst. I don't understand why we don't have like the amount of money that these judges are going to be getting paid, and maybe they have positions in their athletic commission. Retired fighters would gladly take those seats and take that paycheck, and you would get a way better decision than the bullshit. Like, we have people judging MMA that have only ever judged boxing, that have never trained, never done anything. There's plenty of people out there that have the knowledge of the sport and the fight IQ and the ability to judge a fight better than these people. I don't understand. It's got to be a political thing. Like, I don't know the ins and outs of the commissions, but it's garbage. Judging is horrible. Horrible. When you're talking about deciding money and title shots, and you could change the course of someone's career by making a horrible decision. Yeah, I agree.
But we can do an episode on why officiating and reffing in all sports is weaker than it's ever been. Every sport.
Yes.
Every sport. Hockey, football, basketball, MLB, I mean, MMA. And I've thought about it. I can make an argument why. It's not supernatural. It's not random. There's a reason why. But it's a long conversation. But I remember watching a fight, I think a month ago, and the guy won big time. And the judges gave it, 2 judges gave it to him, but 1 judge gave it to the other guy, like, just like with a huge disparity. And when he finally got the win, and Joe Rogan put the mic to him and said, "Are you excited?" He said, "First of all, fuck this. What was that judge thinking?" Like, and he looked over at the judge. It's like, I want to know how you got that. Like, how did you give him like 2 rounds or 3 rounds? I forget how you counted it, but it was totally. And it's like, what are you doing? Like, how the fuck did that happen? Like, that's scary that one guy who's a professional judge can fuck it up so bad. Like, you're a professional goddamn judge. This is your career. This is your, this is how you make money. How do you fuck it up that bad? Unbelievable. Is it corrupt? Is he corrupt? I don't know. Or is he just ridiculously stupid? And if his judgment is poor and he's not very intelligent, how the fuck does he have that job?
Yeah.
But it's bewildering. I see it in all sports. It's bewildering. And anyway, it's crazy.
No, it is crazy. Yeah, I think the fight you're referencing was Sean Strickland and Paulo Costa.
That's right. It was. Yeah, the last one we saw. That's right. The last card.
Strickland won all those rounds for sure.
And,
he was backing Costa up the whole time. And one ref gave all 5 rounds to Costa.
And Strickland, like, what an awesome fighter. All he does is move forward for 5 rounds. Like, and Costa, who's a super conditioned athlete, was getting tired from retreating. Like, all he does is move forward.
Yeah.
Amazing fighter. I love that guy. Love that dude. Colorful too. Like, speaks his mind, doesn't give a fuss. Highly opinionated, and always moves forward.
Yeah. No, Strickland is I love all his mic takes too, because he says whatever the fuck he feels whenever he doesn't you can't cancel a man like that.
Yeah.
He'll say whatever he wants, and there's nothing you can do about it. We're up against time, so I want to ask you.
Yeah, it's all good.
I want to ask you one question. You kind of brought it up earlier when you talked about Sonnen. Who is your greatest MMA fighter that never won a title? Off the top of your head, what's the first name that comes to mind when you think of a greatest MMA fighter that was never really a champion?
For me, off the top of my head, because I mentioned him a few minutes ago, I think from what I saw optically, it's Hendricks.
Johnny Hendricks?
Yeah. I mean, there was a 2-year stretch where he was powerful, had way more striking than anyone in his division. But I mean, you got off the top of my head, but in all reality, that's like, there's a lot of fighters that come to mind, but they only have a title. They have a title. Fucking doesn't have a title. That doesn't have a title. That doesn't have a title.
I'll answer
Yeah,
it and you think about it. You think about it while I answer.
yeah, yeah.
Number one is a guy you brought up earlier, and I think it's Chael Sonnen. Chael Sonnen was 30 seconds away from beating Anderson Silva to be the champion. He dominated it for 4 rounds, 4 minutes, and 30 seconds. And then he got caught in that choke and tapped. If it wasn't for that, he would have been the champion for sure. Then he's a guy, he fights Silva again and does some weird spinning back fist that's completely out of character, gives Silva his back and gets choked out. And then he goes up and fights John Jones. John Jones dominates him. And then he goes over to overseas and starts trying to fight. He was trying so hard to win a championship anywhere and could just never get it done. Plus, he's just such a character. One of the best guys ever at a press conference. One of the most entertaining guys ever to listen to talk. He's got an amazing show on his own. And I wish he would have won the title because he's kind of like a Sean Strickland where he'll say whatever it takes and whatever he thinks. He gives bold opinions. He's my favorite guy that never won a title. There's so many talented athletes. Like
Yeah.
I don't want to steal anybody you might pick, but like Rumble Johnson.
No, I can't think of anyone off the top of my head.
Rumble
but
Johnson,
but
Uriah Faber.
what's that?
Rumble Johnson, Anthony Johnson, Uriah Faber.
No.
So many good fighters that were never really champions in the UFC at least.
Yeah, I'd have to think about that. But Chael also colorful like Strickland. But you're talking about a guy that might have an IQ in the 140s. Like this is a ridiculously smart guy. Comes from privilege, well educated, incredibly well driven, tons of discipline, dedicate himself to the sport. Love him. Like anytime he speaks, I'll listen. Like he's colorful and brilliant mind. But and like you said, one small mistake from being a household name and an absolute champion.
And you really do hate George St. Pierre. You're gonna pick Johnny Hendricks.
I don't like showman retreat when things get heavy. I don't mind showman and arrogance and confidence when things get shitty. You drive in, but this was a guy that before he won the title was hungry, and he had great fights with Matt Hughes. He has a great win because he have 2 wins. Anyway, so when he won the title, everything past that point was to defend that title and to tactically get ahead on the scoreboard and then play defense. I once went to like a party, I guess, and everyone there was French, and they were just rooting for GSP. And it was a big card that night. I forget who was fighting, and everyone bought drinks. And I show up with a pillow. I'm like, you're supposed to come with drinks. Why are you bringing a pillow? It's a GSP fight. I want to bring a pillow because I'm going to fall asleep because the fucker won't fight. If he gets ahead, he will not fight. Could not stand him. Fighter, yes. Warrior, fuck no. Chicken shit. And of course, he comes in ripped, dancing like he was a showman, much like McGregor. Except once these guys, something happens that they don't like, they get punched hard. You see who they are, and they're not fighters.
Yeah.
Incredibly skilled, sure. Great on the ground, yes. A lot of good traits. I mean, a champion, but I don't care. Like, I don't care what accolades you have. If when you finally get hit or hurt in a match, you retreat. I just don't. And I mean, how am I judging? Maybe if the same thing happens to me, I do the same thing. Maybe I'm that type of guy. But I can tell you that men like Fedor, for me, are just not necessarily Fedor, but any fighter that goes in opposed to retreating, is the mark. Is the difference between a fighter and a warrior. And I always respect them more, and I always root for them more. And never liked GSP.
GSP is the only MMA fighter I've ever seen, let alone champion, who tapped to strikes. When Matt Serra was on top of him, hitting him, he tapped. He started tapping.
Because he's a coward. Because he's a chicken shit. Because he doesn't like pain. Like, I think as a fighter, like, imagine if you lived in, 1000 BC or something, and you were a gladiator, and you said, listen, guys, I'm here in the Gladiator Club, and thanks for inviting me, and let's throw down, let's have some fun. And the only thing I got to tell you about me, guys, is I don't like pain. They hang you right there. They just kill you. Like, how can you be a fighter and not enjoy pain? Like, pain is going to be your life. I don't like it, guys. Let me show up with my bandana. Let me do a little bit of dancing, and once I get ahead, I'll stay away from the heat. They'd kill you, and that's GSP. Just doesn't like. And McGregor, I think, is way more way more of an accurate attack style fighter with his striking. But with Khabib, what Khabib did to him, fucking make him look like a fucking girl, like power.
He did him dirty. Did him dirty. Yeah. Even if you don't like the pain, like you have to be a fucking kind of a maniacal human being to be like, yeah, I love the pain. You have to be willing to cast it aside. You have to be willing to.
No, yeah. I don't think any prize fighter is masochistic enough to get aroused or like pain. It's not pain, but there's a biological reaction to when someone hits you, and it's a driving force to either go forward or go back.
Yeah, fight or flight.
Yeah, I think if Joel Hudick gets slapped in a bar, I'm pretty sure his first move is forward, not back, and it's fast and hard, right?
Take over.
Yeah. So, and it's not conscious, it's not pensive, it's not tactical. It's something clicks, something sparks in the brain, and it's the guy's infuriated, and he just wants to go in, and he's pissed off, and he wants to do something about it. But that's not GSP. He's finding a way to play chess out there. When there's blood and teeth on the ground, he's looking to move his bishop. Fuck does that? Like, and still a brilliant fighter, like a super skilled, brilliant fighter and a champion. Just for me,
yeah.
He luck, not a true fighter in my sense of my definition of the word, anyway.
Yeah, and hyper successful, hyper athlete. But part of it too is like we're paying for this. We're paying to watch this. This is an entertainment for us. These are modern day gladiators. And when you see your modern day gladiator tapping to strikes or running or cowering or evading, you feel like you got robbed of your money, partly. So I agree with what you're saying for sure. GSP was very dominant, yeah, but the fact as soon as he tapped his strikes against Matt Serra, I lost a lot of respect for him. And I still think he's a great athlete and a great MMA fighter and a great champion. But man, like watching him get clocked and then just tapping the ground, wanting the ref to save him, that was a real flaccid feeling for me. Like I cannot respect him anymore after that. But you got to go out on your shield, George. Like if he's gonna knock you out, he's gonna knock you out. You're gonna live. The ref's gonna stop him. Don't beg. Don't tap and beg from strikes. Your arm wasn't gonna break.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, exactly. And say what you want about him. For me, that's his calling card, right?
Top 5 beta. He's the opposite of what the Spartacus Project's about. This is the total opposite.
Well, yeah. The whole project is based on bullying betas and trying to hopefully with the idea that they will in turn be forged to get stronger through nothing else but badgering and bullying. That's my dream, anyway.
Yeah. No, he'd be part of it. All right, Chris. Great podcast, man. I love your list. Love talking to you as always. We'll see.
All right, man. Can't wait till next week.
Yes, sir. Sorry I stole your number one. I guess it was just meant to be.
No, we're in sync, right? It's good that we always. It's cool if one of our on each list, one of our guys coincides, right? It means that we're kind of on the same wavelength. So that's all good.
Yeah, that was totally unintentional, but we'll see you next week, brother.
Yes, sir. Have a good one, buddy.
You too.
Later.
Spartacus Project Podcast.